The following is a special presentation of iRacing on LSR TV, your home for sim racing. Live tonight from the Dover International Speedway, LSR TV is happy to say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to our continuing coverage of these 2018 Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series powered by English Auto LLC playoffs, where tonight we start the round of 12, and we are so happy that you're with us on your home for sim racing and the iRacing Esports Network. As always, it is myself, Evan Pasoko, alongside with Brian Backlund in the LSR TV booth tonight. Our producer, Brett Wheeler, downstairs, bringing us to you. And Brian, we are kind of a week behind where all of the things have been happening in the real-life side of things, but we do make that transition into tonight now. 3 races down, still 7 to go on the playoffs, and now things will get interesting because we now will try to limit what are the 12 remaining playoff drivers down to 8 over the course of the next 3 weeks.
And I said it at the end of last week's broadcast, and I'll say it again here tonight. I can't pick 4 drivers out of these 12 that I think belong in the bottom 4. I believe all 12 of these drivers are capable of going up there and advancing to the round of 8. Unfortunately for all of these drivers, 4 of them have to be eliminated in 3 weeks' time. So it's going to be very interesting. And what it's going to come down to is limiting your mistakes. You have 3 really critical races. Dover being tonight is definitely going to be a very challenging race, but they have to look ahead to next week. I think next week is the big question mark for all these drivers. We're going to Talladega. Anything and everything can happen at Talladega, and that's going to be the race where you have to minimize any mistakes. Don't get caught up in the big one. Make sure you're around at the end of the race so you can get those valuable points.
And of course, that may be the big question mark. The good news is, if you want to pull the Chase Elliott as you go for the race win tonight, you don't care about Talladega, you don't care about Kansas. The rule still applies that a win will automatically lock you into the next round. But let's look at our English Auto LLC playoff grid, and it is a tie top to bottom because it is a complete points reset. At least in the opening round of the playoffs, you got some credit for your regular season race wins, although they didn't guarantee you a playoff berth. Each win guaranteed you 3 bonus points headed into the start of the round of 16. No longer the case, but Brian, in that far left-hand side, you can see Sean Casto, Shane Ewing, Nick Silver, Gabe Wood. All of them are eliminated. The drivers now that are on to 12, they are listed in the order that they finished. So Eberhard, Kalisto, Guerrilla, and Vincent were positions 9 through 12 of those that advanced. If they can't better that, they are going to be eliminated. But everybody comes into tonight completely tied. It's a brand new clean slate.
Yeah, and that definitely makes things very exciting from a fan's perspective, because you know that there is no advantage on points, and with the simple point system, 1 position is 1 point on the racetrack. That's exactly how you want to look at it, and it's going to be a very interesting 3 weeks. I think tonight is going to really set the pace for it. I believe, obviously, Andrew Freenarz is probably the driver these guys are going to be looking out for, although I'm looking at the qualifying times right now, Evan. He is not where I expected him to be at all. He is actually qualified 6th for this race so far after being fastest in practice. I'm not sure if he just had a bad lap or maybe he just didn't get the car driving quite the way he wanted to for this round, but definitely not what I expected out of the 88 car. He's been the odds-on favorite, won the last, I believe, 5 weeks in a row, so definitely been the guy to beat, and have to believe he's going to continue to be on that roll here in the next couple of races.
Yeah, with a minute left in queue, I think that's a big question that we need to look at tonight. We've mentioned Freenarz's dominance, and of course, if you've been with us over the course of any of the last couple of weeks, I'm sure you've heard a lot about him. He is on a 5-race win streak. That's the longest out of anybody we've seen all season long. And of course, he swept all 3 playoff races in the round of 16. for what is a current total of 8 wins on the season. But he and Dylan Jones owns that second longest race win streak at 4. They have won every single race since June 18th. That was the last time somebody not named Dylan Jones or Andrew Farinars won here on a Monday night on LSR TV and iRacing Live. It was Michael Guerrilla at Sonoma in the very early hours of the second segment of the year. So it looks like, just based on what we're seeing on the Q charts, Brian, and the fact that Dover, a short track, it is a mile in length, yes, but these guys are known to go it onto a very abrasive track like this. Things could get physical. It certainly could get fun for us over the course of 150 laps. Tonight just may be the night.
Well, and you mentioned how we've only had 2 drivers win since the middle of June. I believe the one driver that wants to say something about that is the guy that won here earlier this season, Spencer Preet. He got a surprise victory here at Dover, but he ended up with that big victory. He's starting on the pole, it looks like, so definitely look out for him to be a guy to try to shake things up here tonight.
Qualifying drawing to a close. We know the running order, so let's go trackside. This is your LSR TV starting grid for race number 24 of 2018. And the driver who gets pole position, Spencer Preet, his 23.149, best by a good margin to qualify him on a pole tonight. And Michael Cozy Jr. in the number 77 Chevrolet outside of the front row will start in second. We'll see what that dynamic duo can pull off in this one just behind the Michael Guerrilla. Looking for a trip to victory lane. It would be good news for him to dig him out of the gray. He is third position on the grid. Jason Jacoby, newcomer, not in the playoffs, but maybe looking to play spoiler, will roll off from fourth position. And David Washington, the wily veteran, inside row 3. That'll be P5.
Andrew Freenar is looking for his 6th win in a row. He's going to start from the 6th position if he's going to get that here tonight. He's going to have a little bit of work to do. Daniel Falkingham will start from the 7th position. Then we have David Comstock starting 8th. Kyle Kamer will start 9th. And then Ross Cato rounds out the top 10.
Continuing on through final time to take a time in the qualifying session. Should say that is going to be Tom Moreno in the number 48 machine, so he'll be inside row 6. Everybody else set based on provisionals. It'll be Dylan Jones starting way back P12, middle of the pack. Should be interesting to see what he can get out of this one. Lionel Callisto rolls in the unlucky number 13 starting spot. It'll be Brandon Bowie 14th and Dwayne Vincent rounding out your top 15.
Eric Stanford will start from the 16th position. Daniel Eberhardt starts 17th. He's going to have a long ways to go to get up through this field tonight. And then Brock Drury will round out the 18-car field here tonight. Evan Pasoko, 150 laps around one of the most difficult tracks on the circuit. It's sure to be a wild race. What do you expect to see here tonight?
We're going to see who can survive this one. The big key is, again, it's the opening race of the round of 12. You can make your life so much easier if you can find success at the Monster. But sometimes, well, your fate does not end up in your own hands. Pace card added in. As always, we're so happy you're spending a Monday night with us on LSR TV and the iRacing Esports Network. Pace car off and away, field in the hands as Spencer Preet is gone. There's a lot of tire spin as we go green from Dover. Guerrilla with an atrocious start checks everybody on the inside lineup as Preet leads down the back.
And what a big, big moment that was for one of our playoff contenders. Before they even got to the green flag, Michael Guerrilla could have ruined his night and potentially ruined his playoff chances if that didn't turn out the way it did right there. He falls in line behind David Comstock. That's going to move him back already to the 6th position, so 3 spots in less than a lap for that number 17 machine. And how about Andrew Freenar is benefiting from that? He started in the 6th position on the outside line. Well, he has already climbed up to 4 thanks to that big mistake there. And so he is already well on his way getting back to the front of the field. But everybody's gotten single file at this point of the race. And at this racetrack, that's almost what you have to do at the beginning of the run. Just kind of settle in, figure out what your car is going to do, wait for the tires to come around, and then you can start racing the guys around you.
Yeah, that's certainly what you need to kind of keep in mind. 150 laps to the board tonight. A little bit shorter than what we saw last year, but still right in that good ballpark. It is a 150-mile race tonight. Tons of time to make something happen. The battle right now is for 9th position. It's the 43 of Brandon Bowie to the inside of Ross Cato. This one a little bit off of your race leaders, but the inside nice and good early. 43 makes a pass down low. Also just kind of take a mental note of what this racetrack looks like. That very light gray color of the asphalt here at Dover International Speedway. Well, and then we'll take another look at it by the time we get to the end of the race, and this line is going to get rubbered in. It's going to spread out, and you'll see drivers certainly a lot more around the racetrack as we go on, but at the moment, bottom of the place to be.
I think Evan was a little confused right there. This is not an asphalt racetrack. This is a concrete track. But yes, the point still stands the same. It's going to be a very light colored right now. The longer this race goes, you're going to see that track rubber in, and it's going to turn a very dark shade of gray, may even turn black in some areas of the racetrack. And that's going to actually move the groove around as well. I ran a couple of races here a couple weeks ago, and the longer these runs go, the more you're going to see that outside line really begin to form. If it goes long enough, you might actually see some of these guys up against the wall trying to make some speed. And that's going to make for some very exciting racing, because then you can get a big run up off the corner to try to carry that momentum to go for a position in front of you. And speaking of position, we have a battle for third going on right now, as here comes Andrew Freenars looking to the inside of Michael Cozy for that third position. Can he make it happen? He's drawn even with him as they go into one, and it looks like Cozy is actually going to go ahead and let him go, and that will move Andrew Freenars up to P3.
Yeah, Cozy didn't have too hot of a start in his own respect. He didn't get going. It was a very quick jump up to P2 for Jason Jacoby, who had actually started behind him, but he outside of the road. But overall, outside, a better place to be than the inside if your name wasn't Spencer Preet. And Andrew Freenars quickly snagged 2 positions, and now he runs in the number 3 spot. Battle on track now. It's for 11th, another one with the 90 machine, as Daniel Eberhardt tries to dig out of way at the back after not taking the time to qualify, and he will take that position away from the 12 of Ross Cato for 11th and 12th. Should also note an issue very early on. Brock Drury in the number 26 car has had to come down pit road. Looks like his night is done. Started 18th. He'll finish there.
Yeah, unfortunate. And this track can just eat people alive. This is one of those tracks where you really have to have some attrition, or you're going to face a lot of attrition, I should say, throughout the course of the night. And unfortunately for Brock, that ended very quickly. We have a battle going on for the second position right now. Andrew Freenars continues his march up through the field as Jason Jacoby almost got into the right rear of that 88 machine, but Andrew Freenars will move into that second position. Jason Jacoby tried to get to his back bumper in the middle of the corner, but could not make it happen. And now you see that 88 car settling into that second position. And he's got his sights set on the number 37 car with Spencer Preet. Spencer looking for another victory here at the Monster Mile, looking to sweep the season here at this concrete mile, but he's going to have his work cut out for him, as that 88 car looks like he is on rails right now.
Yeah, Freenars just hauling the mail right now. Started 6th. He is already up to 2nd. He did all of that in less than the opening 10 laps. So obviously, kind of what we alluded to, Brian, before the green flag came out. Certainly think that that time it qualified was just a little bit off for him. Something else that has changed in the last 2 weeks, drivers now being given the opportunity to do 2 qualifying laps. It's not really something where you complete your first lap and you're going to go faster on the second. But maybe if you make a mistake on the first, you have time to sort of reset and go at it again. So obviously that didn't help him out all that much, but it is something that the drivers had to give him some feedback on, and 2 laps available to them in each qualifying session from this point on to the end of the year. But now that he's through the traffic, we have to watch the intervals. Race leader Spencer Preet, 24.3. He looks good, but the 24.1 for Freenars is that much better. He is closing the race lead.
Yeah, just continues to close in that gap little by little every single lap, and this is where he has beaten people all season long. The longer runs of these races, he seems like he has some short run speed, but he really has the long run speed and the longevity to get through these races. And he just did it again, another 10th and a half or so, being knocked off of the race lead. You're on board with Andrew Freenars right now, so you're going to get a very good view of just how set into the racetrack he is right now. You go off into turn 3 right here, you're on board. You can see just how good he's able to get that car right down to the bottom of the racetrack. He gets down there, then he gets back into the gas. This is a very difficult part of the track, coming up off turn 4 like that, because you're going up over the hill. It can really upset the car and make it very loose coming out of the corner. And now you can see he's right back down to the bottom in 1 and 2. Same thing right here, going underneath the bridge. When you come up off the corner, it can really upset that car because of how much of a banking difference there is. But he does a great job at hanging onto that thing and making it look so easy as he's doing it.
Yeah, you dig out of the hill, you come out of that banking, and the car gets very loose on exit. And certainly we've seen Turn 2 catch drivers many good times in the past here in this RealSimRacing Cup Series. We will see if that also is a Calamity Quarter area this evening, but it's a waiting game now. It's not on yet, but you have to feel like this battle for the race lead pretty much imminent at this point. Frenar's close to the back bumper very quickly, and he has just kind of sat there for a moment, not wanting to force the issue. He could have probably driven up right onto the back of the 37 and done a move that I don't think you need to make at this juncture, but Spencer Preet's definitely aware that he is there. Frenar's just waiting for the right opportunity, I think, to actually go and try to make that pass.
And I think if you're Spencer Preet, you know that this 88 is a lot faster than you, but at the same time, you do not want to just let him go. He's won the last 5 races in a row. You know he's got a very good car and potentially win 6 in a row, but you don't want to just give it to him. As I say that, though, it looks like he might just be doing that. He runs the high side down in 1 and 2. I thought maybe he was going to try to stay even with him, but he does fall in line behind Andrew Frenars and lets the number 88 machine get to the race lead. So it took just 18 laps for Andrew Frenars to come from 6th to the race lead, and now he's going to try to set sail. But to my point, if you're Spencer Preet, I don't know that I would have done that. I think I would have raced Andrew Frenars just a little bit harder, made him work a little bit more for that race lead, because you can't just lay over. If you do this every week, you're going to get to Homestead, and it's going to be almost impossible to beat him. You've got to start figuring out how hard you need to race him now. That way, when it gets down to Homestead, if you're in that Final Four, you have an opportunity to challenge him.
If Frenars really didn't have to wait around that long to complete the move, and once he went down to the inside, seemed like it was easy pickings. He had that preferred lane, which is still way down low, and just 20 laps now into this Dover 150, and made the pass just like that. And now I'm certain that we're going to see the 88 stretch a little bit of distance. We'll see if he is able to pull away. Listen, Spencer Preet's got a good race car. He's the second ahead of Jason Jacoby. Jacoby maybe getting caught by Cozy, a fight for third. Maybe not all that far away from us right now as the 77's kind of closed back up on the 8, but I mean, Andrew Frenars, we mentioned the sheer dominance, and again, this is something recent. It hasn't always been like this. The drivers who took a majority of the race wins in the opening segment, all still in this series. Eberhardt, Preet, Washington, Frenars, Bowie. You know, wins were pretty spread around, but Frenars has been on a rail. Darlington, Indianapolis, Las Vegas, Richmond, and even the Charlotte Roval, 5 in a row. When, well, you thought that P6 starting spot would have slowed him down. Not the case. Looking good early, basically like he started up front.
5 in a row, and just think about this for a second. At 5 completely different style of racetracks. You have Darlington, which is a track all by itself. Indianapolis, which is a completely unique track. Then you have Las Vegas, which is a cookie cutter. But then you go to a short track and then a Roval. I mean, he just won on 5 different styles of racetracks and made it look easy during that entire stretch. There was really never a point where you questioned if he was going to be the guy to beat. He just was, and that's what's truly incredible. And he's doing it again here at the Monster Mile. This is another track that is unique from any other racetrack on the schedule, but he has proven yet again that he has got the car to beat. He may not have had the qualifying time that he wanted, but he got up there, and now he is driving away. Already put a half a second. Oh, and actually now up to 0.8 of a second, just gained 0.3 in 1 lap over that 37 car, who is now actually being challenged by the 8 of Jason Jacoby. Jason looks like he's got a pretty good handling race car right now as he looks to the inside of that 37, and Spencer Preet let him go. It looks like, yes, he will indeed let the 8 car go. So Jason Jacoby now moves into second.
And the 8 machine said thanks over the radio. The 37's got a big run off the corner. He's not going to bother going on a counterattack and diving it back down to the inside. I think Preet really playing this one for the long game, and he will let the 8 machine go on to buy as well. Jacoby with a better race car at the moment, so it's now back to second position for the 8. And surprised that Cozy's fallen off a little bit here in the 77. I was just kind of thinking out loud 5 laps ago or so. I was expecting Cozy to make a play on Jacoby for third. Instead, he's dropped back a good bit, and that may be the next car that Spencer Preet is going to have to worry about. There's been a good bit of battle, though, mid-pack here. It's David Comstock in the 42 on back. We've been keeping an eye on it on the broadcast, and on the 98 machine, Dave Washington's trying to make a move. We've also got Daniel Falkenham, though, now in the 1 machine entering the mix. Daniel Eberhardt. These are drivers who are proven race winners in Full Throttle Cup competition. And right now they're fighting a bit packed. The 90 machine a little bit sideways at top of 4 as that car nearly got away from him.
And that'll happen here as the tires wear out, just because of how aggressive you have to run this racetrack. And then, like I said, you're coming up out of that corner and up over a hump. It really upsets the car, and it'll make that thing feel extremely loose, especially on older tires. So you're going to see these guys fight with that throughout the entire evening, and it could eventually bite a couple of these drivers. But the one thing I've been watching is number 42 of David Comstock. Up until right here, down in 1 and 2, he's been running that higher groove on both ends of the racetrack. This time he elects to go to the bottom, and you can see David Washington actually did run that middle to high groove coming off of 1 and 2, and he got a really good run. Could have probably challenged that position, but Alexis stayed behind him. But now you see both these drivers run that middle groove through 3 and 4. They bring the car all the way down to the bottom, coming off the corner, doing a really good job here. The problem is they're not any quicker than the guys ahead of them. They're just kind of defending against each other right now, and Comstock's doing a pretty good job holding on to this position, and that's a very critical position because every point matters, and this one position down the stretch throughout the rest of this race could potentially be a big moment in his chances to move on to the round of 8.
Yeah, this could add up as this, round of the playoffs goes on. Certainly every little bit is important, and I think what you're seeing now is that 42 goes high, and I think that would have been the opportunity for Washington to go low, but he kind of followed Comstock too high and up and off it into the corner, and it threw away an opportunity there. But these drivers, that veteran experience is what you're seeing in them not rush to make a move. I think it's the same thing that we saw Freitas do to make the move on Preet. He didn't dive down right away. He waited just a little bit, and maybe that's what the thought process is behind the wheel of the number 98 machine. But I would make that move sooner than later. If you keep sitting behind the 42, you're going to have a couple of other cars up your rear end, and this time you'll get all the way to the back bumper, but still not making the move. There's now 4 cars separated last time by just about half of a second.
And these guys are really getting aggressive at this point of the run. Oh, you see, looks like Eberhardt once again had a moment coming off of turn 4. Does a great job holding on to it, but that opens the door for Dylan Jones. He looked high, looked like he had a shot to take that position away, but did not get the run through the middle of the corner that he was looking for. And David Washington has got to be getting really frustrated because I feel like he knows he's got the better car than David Comstock does, but he just can't find a way around him. It's so hard to pass on this racetrack, and he just can't seem to make anything happen to get by him. But he's got to be patient. Like you said, still 115 laps or so, 118 laps left in this race, so plenty of time to get that position. You just got to be very calculated in that move. But we also have to kind of look back up to the battle for the race lead, because don't look now, but here comes Jason Jacoby. He has cut that gap down from a second down to just about a half a second, and he might be one of those guys that could finally get up there and challenge the 88 car.
It may be. When he made his debut at the start of this third and final segment on the year to open playoffs at Las Vegas. First ever start on a Monday night, and he started up front, ran good, but wasn't able to get the result. He has struggled since then, not necessarily the showings that he has wanted, but there is speed in that number 8 machine. There is a chance maybe he becomes the first non-playoff driver, or I guess I should rephrase that, the first non-Andrew Freitas to get a race win on the playoffs, and of course, because he is not battling for this 2018 championship, that will pay out over $400 to your top finishers. The 8 machine, I think, in a position where I think he likes that underdog role a little bit, having not run the full year. And of course, listen, if Freitas finishes second, which would be surprising in its own right, that's a ton of points, but it could be critical with Talladega looming next Monday night to not get a race win and not get that automatic bye into the next round.
Yeah, and that's a very critical thing to think about, because if you go into Talladega without that guarantee, yes, Andrew Freitas has been the dominant guy, but a guaranteed position into the next round by winning here tonight is incredibly important, because yes, he's been so good, but if he gets caught up in a wreck next week at Talladega, that's not going to matter. He's going to be in a hole and could potentially be in trouble. You can see we're on board with the 8 of Jason Jacoby now, and he has closed that gap down to less than a car length. He's right on the back bumper of the 88 machine. And for Jason Jacoby, this is a no-pressure field right here, because, as you mentioned, he did not run the whole season. He's not racing for the championship. He is strictly here for one thing. He wants to grab that checkered flag. He doesn't care about who's racing for a championship. He just wants to win the race. So he's in a great position right here. He can be as aggressive as he wants. He can make a different strategy call should he choose to. He can pretty much do whatever he wants to try to go out there and get this victory tonight.
There's certainly a multitude of options available when you don't have the risk of go for the race win, and if you don't get a race win, not that big of a deal, because that's the only thing that matters. As we see now another battle for position, it is back behind them with the 77 of Cozy on the outside of Guerrilla. It's for 4th and 5th, and it's that 17 down low who's attacking. He will make the pass down on the preferred lane. Don't look down, but Michael Grillia getting a little bit better as this run stretches now nearly 40 laps in length. Back up front, though, battle for the race lead almost here. With the 8 machine and Jacoby on the bumper. The other thing you have to keep in mind, Brian, is there's less on the line for the 8. So maybe he can try those more unique pit strategies, shake it up a little bit. If he doesn't win, it's not the end of the world. But he knows Farinars is a playoff driver. The last thing the 8 machine would want to do is to get into him and cause this situation where a non-playoff driver takes a playoff competitor out of this race. I'm curious if Farinars maybe uses that against him, races him really hard here, maybe daring Jacoby to go full out and make a move.
It's a very tough call if you're Andrew Freenars, just like it's a tough call if you're Jason Jacoby, because if you're Andrew, you don't want to put yourself in a precarious spot. As they're side-by-side for the race lead down here in 3 and 4, Jacoby made the move. Andrew Freenars tried to pinch him down, tried to keep him from getting there, but Jacoby is there as they stay side-by-side. But you can see Freenars was able to hold him off coming off turn 4 to hang on to that race lead. It's one of those things, you've got to go as hard as you can, but at the same time, you have to think in the back of your head, you're the highest running playoff driver, whether or not Jason Jacoby gets by you right now. You've got Spencer Preet and Michael Guerrilla right behind you, but you still have a really good advantage over a handful of these drivers. So is racing hard to try to hold on at this point of the race? Is it that important, or should you try to set yourself up for later in the race? Still over 100 laps left in this thing. You never know what's going to happen. We have at least one set of pit stops should this thing go green, possibly 2 sets of pit stops. So you have other things to worry about that could potentially put you back in a position to win this thing. I think right now, if I was Andrew Freenars, I would probably be willing to give that position up, just knowing that I can come back and get him later in the race.
We'll see if that is the direction the 88 machine is going to go. Oftentimes, Farinars hasn't really wanted to play that numbers game and just be content with being the highest playoff driver. We talk about the, little bit of a tightening up of discipline. It's more difficult to be in the best 8 cars of 12 than it is to be in the best 12 of 16. So certainly your expectations have to go up. Listen, Farinars has been racing this like it's been the championship for-winner-take-all. He's out there to win races, but as we go back on the board again and continue to watch this final, awfully tight there, as Jacoby, who's been very timid on entry, drove it in way hard into turn 1, and if Farinars, you have to be concerned about that. Do you want to let him go? I think at the end of the day, Farinars would much rather race for the win than he would to be in a position where he's just going to sit around in points race. I just think that's his MO, but it's a fascinating dynamic to watch these two.
Yeah, it's one of those things, it's a very tough call to make, but Andrew Freenars knows what he's doing, obviously, because he's won so many races this year, 8 races on the season. I mean, he's been absolutely untouchable so far through the playoffs, so definitely has the right strategy and the right mindset when it comes to these playoff races. But Jason Jacoby doesn't care about any of that. He's just here to try to go for the win, try to lead laps, and he is doing a great job staying right there in the mirror of that 88 machine, worrying him to death and making him have to think about it. This is the first time really in quite a while that Andrew Freenars has had a challenge like this consistently for the race lead. Jason Jacoby is just not willing to give him a break at this point. The hard part right now is just finding a way around him. You can try to make that move to the outside line, but it is so hard to do, and getting down on the bottom is even more difficult because the guy in front of you can pinch you down and keep that line away from you. Now we see Jacoby, he runs the middle groove in 1 and 2, trying to see if he can get that big run up off the corner. Can he do it right here? He looks like he's got a really good run. Is it going to be enough? I don't think it's going to be, but he's just searching around for that opportunity, trying to see if he can find his way around the 88 machine.
Well, it's been a blistering pace thus far from Dover without a caution, and the 8 machine right onto the bumper. He needed to get there a little bit later because he wasn't able to make a dive to the inside in time, and Jason Jacoby is going to try again, but Andrew Freenar is showing, listen, I'm holding the preferred lane. If you want to pass me, you've got to figure something out. But 2 laps from now, we're already going to be 1/3 distance in this Dover 150 as we work on lap number 49 of 150 at this point. Your race leaders 3.1 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. We noted earlier on that Brock Drury had dropped out of this race. Not good news for Tom Moreno and Eric Stanford. Those 2 drivers also with incidents, and there a caution flag just as we talk about it, and just as some cars had pitted, first yellow is out on the night.
And that is really going to bite Spencer Preet because he is currently being shown 2 laps down as a result of him coming to pit road, and it looks like, I'm not really sure what happened here, trying to find the accident, but definitely some issues out there to bring out our first caution of the evening. and that's going to really bite Spencer Pratt. Actually, I think he might have had bigger issues because he's 3 laps down right now. So definitely got to keep an eye on that 37 machine.
Yeah, we're trying to find the incident. It was Michael Cozy Jr. in the 77. A bitter irony that Spencer Pratt comes down to kick off a short pit strategy, and it is Cozy who loses it all on his own. Sideways, slinging side to side, and he unfortunately ends up on the outside of the racetrack there, and it'll bring out our first caution flag of the evening. We'll rejoin the action, and we look to see what the decision is going to be here now for drivers as far as pit road going to be open under caution flag conditions, assuming that everybody else going to pit now that didn't. Really, only Spencer Pratt, the driver, who's going to lose out on all of this because, again, he had just come down pit road.
And he's going to lose out in a big way because while he's going to get the waiver out, he can get one of those laps back, he's still going to be 2 laps down. And being 2 laps down in this race really hurts because of the points right now, because he is going to lose a significant amount of points if we don't get enough cautions to get him back on the lead lap to bring him back into this race. Right now he scored in the 15th position. That's not where he needs to be. He was running up inside of the top 5 prior to this happening, so a very big moment here. But you see all these guys down here on pit road looking for tires and fuel. Andrew Freenars will easily win the race off pit road. It's going to be a drag race between Jason Jacoby and Michael Guerrilla for second. I believe Jacoby got him, and then Guerrilla will come out third. How about Dave Washington coming out in fourth? And then it looks like Dylan Jones will come out top 5.
A good race off of the pit lane for those drivers, and if the call for everybody, as we saw Pratt down, Brian, you'll, as our in-house driver expert per se, get to know a lot more about the strategy than I will. With Pratt pitting there just shy of lap 50, his call obviously was looking like it was going to be a 2-stopper. If that's the decision for everybody else, then you're in a position where, well, this yellow doesn't do a whole lot. But if you had some people maybe trying to go for a 1-stopper, this certainly forces them in a different spot.
I mean, they're definitely going to have to pit at least one more time coming to the finish of this race. I do believe that's what Spencer Pratt was looking for. He was going to pit on lap 50, pit on lap 100. And based off of what I was seeing out of everybody else, I think everybody else is going to make this a 1-stop race. They were going to run their cars out of fuel, probably pit around lap 75 to 80, and then come in and get their tires and fuel at that point of the run. But it's one of those things. It's so hard to make that decision to short pit like we saw Spencer Pratt do, because you just don't know. This race looked like it had a green flag feel. We went green almost 50 laps. It felt like it might go green the whole distance, but you just never know, and that's the unfortunate part of it. That's why it's called strategy. You just hope that you have the right one when it's all said and done. But he still has an opportunity. If we can get a couple of quick cautions, he can get back on the lead lap, get back into this thing, and still make something out of this race. But certainly he has an uphill battle for the rest of the night.
Certainly an uphill battle for the rest of the night, and the rest of the night contains less than 100 laps to go in this one. But the big thing is this might give a little bit of extra life to Freenars. I'm curious to see if Jacoby's just better, but based on what we saw, Freenars started P6, and it was Jacoby who started 4th, and obviously Freenars was able to get to the race lead much sooner. So I think that the 88's better on the short run. Now, this is going to be a good opportunity. Good comparison. They'll be side by side, but this might help Andrew get away a tad bit. And if Jacoby gets tied up with some other cars, could give the 88 some space.
I think Jacoby managed his tires a little bit better than Freenars on that run, because when Andrew Freenars got to him, Jacoby didn't even fight him. He just let him go and just kind of rode there, and then managed to run him down later in the run. So I think that's part of it. Now we're going to see both of these guys at the front of the field. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But I'm not willing to count that 11 car out or the 98 out. I feel like if they get some track position, you might see those two players. Dylan Jones hasn't said anything in quite a while, hasn't won a race in quite a while because Andrew Freenars has been winning everything. His last win was at Watkins Glen all the way back in August. But this is another driver that we talked about being one of the guys you expected into the Final Four at Homestead. Now is when he's got to show that speed and show that he can get up there and challenge these guys. And he's up there in that 5th position right now, so he's certainly well on his way.
Lights are off on a pace car. Restart going to come up this time. Michael Cozy Jr. going to get sent to the back with the end of the longest allowed penalty for bringing out that caution. That'll cost him what would have been a 7th place spot on the restart. And we will see what just happens between this duo on the front row. The 88 gets to control. Here we go. Watch for the tire spin. There was a ton of it on the first start of the night, and look how slow, 42 miles an hour off of the quarter. Green flag in the air for Freenars. Everybody gets going about the same slow pace as he really checked him up on the restart.
Guerrilla had another moment too. He spun the tires just a little bit. It wasn't near as bad on the initial start of the race, but still had a scary moment on that restart. Manages to hold on to the third position right now, and now everybody's trying to get single file. You can see through the top 6 or so they already are. David Comstock is racing side by side with Daniel Eberhardt. That's a battle for 6th and 7th, I believe. Looks like Eberhardt's going to win that battle to move ahead, and indeed he will. Just trying to move forward. As you can see, a lot of action going on right now.
The 8 machine got loose at a turn number 4, and he pulled down to the inside, and Jacoby might have an issue here. He is very slow on the inside of the racetrack.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with that 8 machine, but he has not gotten it back up to speed yet. Now it looks like he's just trying to get things rolling back to pit road possibly, but some issues with that 8 machine. Not sure at all what happened, but this is not what the field wanted to see. I can tell you that much, because I can tell you, if you're Michael Guerrilla, Dylan Jones, any of these drivers that is chasing Andrew Freenars, you wanted to see somebody get up there and take this lead away from him and potentially take the race win away from him. That way he's not guaranteed into that round of 8, and then if something were to happen next week at Talladega, you could potentially see him fall out of this thing. Not really sure what happened to the 8 machine though, if maybe he just lost power or not sure, but that was very weird. He just, when he had the issue, he went down onto the apron in turn 1 and just kind of started coasting, so not really sure there.
Yeah, I believe he may have said on the radio that he lost power to the car. You know, sometimes you hit the wrong button on your sim rig and you shut the car off. So we'll see if that was the issue for the 8. That is what it sounds like. If we have an opportunity to chat with him post-race, certainly we'll ask him about that, but that's going to put him way behind because, well, now we don't get that fight between the top 2. Freenars leading on top of Michael Guerrilla. Don't count that 17 machine out either, though. He comes into this race in a position where I think he's looking to make a little bit of noise, much quieter than he would have liked in the open round of this playoff. It looked very good on the long end of the most recent run. Freenars pulling about a 10th per lap. That's what I expected. I think the 88 is very good, short run, and normally he is the exceptional car on the long run. So if that's not the case tonight, could it be interesting? Say this thing goes green to the end, you got green flying pit stops in a mix. This race could be wide open if that's the scenario.
I'm curious to see how these guys are going to play out this round of pit stops too. If they're going to just split this thing down the middle, which basically would still be pitting around lap 100, or if you're going to see these guys maybe try to short pit to get on a different strategy from the 88, or potentially stay out longer and try to catch a caution to trap the 88 a lap down. So there's a host of things these drivers could do should this thing stay green to the end. Or stay green long enough for pit stops to happen. So definitely a lot of things could happen to change the outcome of this race. But now everybody is just kind of settling in. And I think if you're Michael Guerrilla, you saw what Jason Jacoby did at the beginning of this run, or at the beginning of this race rather, really just managing his tires and then be able to go up there and chase that 88 down later in the run. I think if you're that 17 machine or the 98 or any of these drivers, you kind of just want to go into a conservation mode at this point and see if you can do the same thing that we saw Jason do earlier on.
It's certainly something to keep an eye on. There's a couple of battles here and there. Of course, the 43 machine to fight right now on track as he tries to get around David Comstock, and he will do so. The 42 kind of gets a ride back up to him. Don't expect those drivers to be taking each other out. Both of them with racing to bids on the cars. Shout out to those drivers and, of course, their sponsor for being a part of all the action here on Monday nights. And Bowie get the best out of that duo at the moment as they exchange 6th and 7th spot. It's an interesting group here because you got Daniel Falkenham trying to get on the inside of the line. Now, Callisto, there was a lot of, 2 or 3 position gains and or losses on pit road that drivers are still trying to remedy.
Absolutely, and you're just trying to do everything you can to get as close to the front of the field as you can later in this race, and you can just see the attrition level starting to really come into play. These guys are just not able to keep up with that 88 machine. It's amazing just how good he is and how he's able to hang on, but Daniel Eberhardt is the last guy that's even within range of these guys. He's a second and a half back from the race leader. You got to go back a full second to find Brandon Bowie, and then another half a second or so back to Lionel Callisto. And David Comstock looks like he might be having some issues because he is dropping back here. He was just up there battling with Daniel Eberhardt maybe about 10 laps ago, and now he's battling for that 8th and 9th position with Daniel Falkenham side by side with the 1, and he's got Michael Cozy in that 77 machine as well trying to challenge. So makes me wonder if that 42 machine's got some issues.
Yeah, maybe the 42 machine struggling a little bit. We are on board with Cozy in the 77 as he tries to be the next driver to get around Comstock. Falkenham had the spot at the line, didn't clear him, and that battle continues into the corner. Finally, he's got him. Cozy not able to stick a nose in quite yet as they dove down into turn number 3, and Neil set his sights back up on the back of the Gary Mercer truck in 42 Chevrolet and see if he can make something happen, but not the best run here thus far for Comstock. He hasn't really lost anything. In fact, he's still running higher than where he started in this race, but last couple of laps maybe not as good on this run as he was on that first. And I'm impressed that Cozy's doing good. He's only been able to pick up 4 spots so far, but I mean, for the damage that we see on that car after the self-spin, the subsequent end of the longest line penalty, he's got right front and left rear damage. Doesn't look like it's hurting him all that much, although when you consider the fact that he was a P2 car in qualifying and he's running 10th, I suppose it is at least a little bit.
Well, and something else you've got to consider right now, if you're these drivers right here, Daniel Falkenham, David Comstock, Michael Cozy, Dwayne Vincent, this is the battle for what would be the final position in the round of 8 right now, because everybody started at a clean slate coming into this race. Everybody was tied with the same amount of points. Right now, David Comstock is the 8th highest playoff driver in this race right now, running in that 9th position. David Washington is the only driver right now in the top 10 that is not a playoff driver. He's sitting up there in that 3rd position. But right here, this could be the battle. You see Michael Cozy, he's currently the first car out. If we were to end this thing right now, he'd be the first guy eliminated. So this is how tight things could be down the stretch. These points matter, and if you're Michael Cozy, you've got to get up on the wheel and try to find a way around that 42 machine and try to build yourself a little bit of a buffer.
Certainly build up what you can now. You don't know what's going to come. Of course, you always want to leave yourself a little bit of leeway at a racetrack like Dover International Speedway, where a small hiccup on your own account and give away a lot of time. Those could really kind of jump out at you out of nowhere. So it's a good idea to always get all that you can. But it's a great fight for second right now. There's a handful of cars all over the place. Guerrilla playing defense to Daniel Eberhardt, who started 17th. And he'll go to the inside, side by side for second. Your biggest mover on the 9 and almost contact as Guerrilla with a gutsy move to slide that across the nose. And now, I thought maybe the 90 to Washington was going to go low. He does it. Dylan Jones sideways into 3. There's a lot of fast race cars right now, and this is a great fight to watch. Don't get me wrong, Brian, but they are fighting for the scraps that Andrew Freitas is leaving behind. He's 2.5 seconds to the race lead.
Yeah, it's got to be so frustrating if you're these 4 drivers, knowing that you're racing this hard for second position. You're not even racing for potentially the race win. You're just battling for the next best position on the racetrack. So it's one of those deals, but they got to be extremely aggressive right here. Just try to get themselves in a position. We're about to the halfway point of this race, so they know what their cars are doing at this point. They know what they need to do. We're getting to that point where if they're going to have to pit one more time, it's going to be decision time. Are they going to short pit? Are they going to try to split this thing down the middle? Or are they going to run it late? We're going to have to see what happens here over the next handful of laps.
And speaking of the next handful of laps, this time by across the halfway point tonight for the Dover International Speedway. So let's take a look at our iRacing Midway Race Break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game with professionally organized racing from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, and more. As we watch a couple of battles mid-pack, 75 laps have been complete, and 75 laps are still to go for the Monster Mile. It is 6th place starter Andrew Freitas, who has led the most laps thus far. He leads 2.5 seconds. And for the Michael Guerrilla, that's the battle we've been following. Eberhardt currently scored behind in 3rd, up 14 spots, and is your biggest mover. Behind him, it's David Washington in 4th, and Dylan Jones to round out your top 5. A little bit of a gap, then you'll find Brandon Bowie scored a P6 at the moment. Lionel Kalisto is in 7th. Daniel Falkenham right now P8, with David Comstock 9th, and Michael Cozy Jr. rounding out your top 10.
Dwayne Vincent currently sits in that 11th position, followed by Kyle Kamer, who's about 3 seconds behind him. That's currently in 12th position. Ross Cato sits third, is currently scored 2 laps down in the 15th position. Huge implications towards his playoff hopes right now. And then the last 3 drivers have already retired from this race. Eric Stanford 16th, Tom Morano is 17th, and Brock Drury is 18th, and we'll round out your 18 car field. And that's been a look at your iRacing Midway Race Break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iRacing.com to sign up today. And Evan, these guys could jump in here on Monday nights and see if they can challenge that 88 car. So far, we haven't seen anybody that can beat him. Maybe some of these new guys can come in here and show.
So certainly, it is a high concentration of talent in this Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series, and we have been seeing some fantastic stuff all year long. And this has been a pretty tame race, I would say, by Dover International Speedway standards. So I'm kind of waiting for the next ball to drop, and there's a chance we go green, we have pit strategy, and we win this race just like that. However, you never know, and you can never be too sure when you're talking about Miles the Monster.
So you're saying these guys have tamed the monster so far, right?
Well, they're not there yet. We're 82 laps out of 150, but he hasn't gotten them yet. That's all I'll say. And listen, Racetrack can take that as a challenge if it wants. We had that one close call, the opening start of the race. It was a crazy restart. Tires were slipping and sliding. Well, the only drivers who have dropped out of this race, single car accidents, and they didn't lead to cautions. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, you make a valid point. These guys have had a very good, or have done a very good job at getting around this racetrack without any major issues. Michael Cozy's the only driver really that's had issues aside from the three that have already retired from the race, having that spin on the front stretch. But aside from that, these guys have done a really good job at keeping out of the wall, keeping their cars clean. And that's what you've got to do at this racetrack. Most times during the race, you cannot race the people around you. You just have to race the racetrack just because of how challenging this place is to try to do it. And we're getting news that tonight's strength of field, if you follow our iRacing official series, they actually have a strength of field to determine just how strong the field of drivers is. Right now, this strength of field is well over 5,000, which is absolutely incredible when you consider just how talented this field is. That's a type of field you would see in a top split pro race, basically. So very impressive to see the caliber of drivers we have in this field.
And so happy all these drivers are with us every Monday night. Of course, if you want to get involved with anything Real Sim Racing, you can go to livesimracing.com. Look for the Real Sim Racing tab up at the top of your screen, and you can find out more information maybe on how to get involved in this season, and of course anything else we have coming up in the future in this Monday night slot. But strength of field over 5,000 tonight, tons of fun, and we're seeing that play out now. Now, we go back to the question of what the strategy was going to be, Brian, the two-stopper for the one-stopper, and of course what that one and only yellow that we've seen thus far does to your whole plan of attack. If you are to go 50 laps, which was the Spencer Preet call, your pole sitter in this race, let's not let this get forgotten. And again, it maybe got drowned out a little bit at all of the pit stops, but Spencer Preet, your pole sitter, pitted early just as the caution came out. He is still stuck 2 laps down without a yellow flag since then to get any sort of a wave around. So he is 2 laps down in 15th position. Your pole sitter completely taken out of this race just by something out of his own control and old-fashioned bad luck. So if you are to pit, maybe your driver's a little bit more hesitant when we get to lap 100 to pit, or do maybe drivers just want to stretch it even further than that, seeing what happened to the 37 car?
I think it's one of those calls that's a very risky call to make, and if you're one of the playoff drivers, it's certainly not a call that you make with ease. I think Spencer Preet definitely proved that he was the first guy to make that call, and I believe he might have been one of the few to make that call had it stayed green, just because it is such a risky call at a track like this where you're easily going to lose 2 laps like he did. But I also look at it from the flip side. Andrew Freenar is 3.4 seconds ahead of the field and is on his way to locking himself into the round of 8. You've got to do something different if you're going to beat that 88 car. We have seen for the last 5 weeks in a row, and now 6 after tonight, that you are not going to beat him on raw speed. You are going to have to beat him on strategy. And I think right now, if you're Michael Guerrilla, if you're Daniel Eberhardt, Dylan Jones, if you're any of these drivers, you've got to start making those risky calls now so that you can try to steal some of these wins.
And you want to talk about something else interesting? Listen, Jason Jacoby, we saw the incident and basically have now confirmed that the issue with the 8 Ford was that engine cut out for about a half a lap, and that's what cost him so much time. He's 15 seconds behind your race leader. That's not something that an undercut on pit road can fix. If you're Guerrilla and, Eberhardt still within 4 seconds, you pit a lap or 2 earlier, maybe you can make something happen. But it's not going to be something that's remedied for Jacoby by a little bit of strategy flair. But I'm sure he might be kicking himself over what may have been, because right now he is the fastest car on the racetrack. He has been right there with Frenars. Frenars edged him by about 2/100ths that last time, but it has been for the last handful of laps in favor of the 8. But he's 13th and he can't do anything about it. So certainly a tough break. That's 2 drivers, fast cars, Jacoby and Preet, taken out of this race on varying strokes of bad luck.
Yeah, that's frustrating for Jason Jacoby because, like you mentioned earlier on, he's not here racing for points. He's here for one thing, and that's to go for the victory. And to be stuck like he is right now, back in that 13th position, and like you said, being 15 seconds behind, there really isn't a strategy that's going to get this 8 car back into it. The only strategy I could see that maybe could work is that he runs his car out of gas and hopes for a caution after everybody else has pitted and maybe catches a couple of them a lap down and gets his track position back that way. Aside from that, there's really not much that the 8 car can do at this point aside for just hoping that he can catch a caution and have a chance to get back into this thing. But for the rest of these drivers, they have to do something different. You know, if I was one of these drivers, I would just be thinking there's got to be something I can do to try to beat this 88 car. And then you also have to think these guys are going to have to come down the pit road. This is a very, very easy pit road to speed on because the pit road speed is 35 miles an hour. It's difficult to get your car slowed down at this racetrack down to 35 miles an hour when you're doing about 140 in the corner. So that is something, too, that could potentially play in this thing. If Andrew Frenars were to make a mistake coming on the pit road, that could definitely take him out of this thing as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of time to be lost and or gained on how aggressive you are if you do decide to come down to the pit lane. We've seen some drivers just simply head to the flat of the racetrack into turn 3. A lot of them maybe wait a little bit longer into the center of the corner. It is a rough transition also from the 24 degrees of banking on the concrete surface down to the flat of the racetrack as well, that you're getting hard on the brakes and you're making a very hard transition that cars spin out oftentimes. And there are some pit roads where that pit road wall is simply not there. Typically, the 1.5 mile racetracks don't have a pit wall on the right-hand side. There is one here at Dover. Otherwise, it would be complete calamity if an incident happened on the French straightaway. Those barrels, those bright yellow things, yeah, you don't miss them. You know they're there, but sometimes you cannot miss them if you get into trouble, so that's a place to keep an eye on. And I know these drivers have figured it out over the last few weeks, but I still keep looking back to that more restrict pit exit protocol on this iRacing service. If you've noticed that at turn 2, there's a blue pylons and a blue stripe down on the apron. Drivers have to stay below the banking all the way through the exit at turn 2. I don't think that's as big as the pit road entry here, but at some tracks that's played havoc as well.
Yeah, at this track particularly, I think it's going to be very difficult because you're trying to get up to speed on that apron, which doesn't have a lot of grip to begin with, which can make it very easy for you to slide around. If you get your right side tires up onto the racetrack, that's going to give you a penalty. So they're going to have to be very careful when that comes to that point as well. But we're getting to the point of the run where if we're going to see any of these guys split this thing down the middle, it's going to happen in the next lap or two. We're at lap 100 right now, so these drivers, if they're going to do it, this is where they're going to start making that move. If we don't see them pit in the next 4 or 5 laps, I believe they're going to run this thing to about lap 125 or so, which would be about the end of their fuel window. Maybe the lap 130 would be about as far as they could go, but at that point they're going to have no choice but to start making their way to pit road. So again, if I'm Michael Guerrilla, which here we go, we got a couple of guys coming to pit road, Guerrilla and Eberhard both at the same time make their way to pit road. Oh, some issues right there. As you see, the 17 really had to fight to get down to 35 miles an hour. You see just how difficult that was. He might actually have gotten caught with speeding because he was not at 35 when he got to the line.
It's interesting because Eberhard actually had the better pit road entry, and it's Guerrilla who may have got the speeding penalty because he locked it up in the box. And I think Michael Guerrilla may have gotten one because he just asked Eberhard over the radio, how did you not get a speeding penalty? So we'll see if either of these drivers are going to be hit with that decision. No doubt that this is going to be the final trip down to the pit lane if we can stay green. Eberhard also over the radio saying that he is pitting down for service, but awfully tight and actually contact between those two on the entrance. The Bernardi machine out of pit road. The 17's okay, though. He'll just beat the Donnie off of the pit lane. They'll exit right bumper to bumper.
And Andrew Frenars has made his way to pit road, as has Dylan Jones. And Jones also had a bit of a slide coming into the pit road. And be interesting to see if he got that thing woed down, as that was a very, very close right there for him. He was doing about 40 when he got to the line, so have to see what happens. But this is where you have to be mistake-free for Andrew Frenars because you've had the best car all night long. You're on pit road, no mistakes. You can see he's being very, very easy into his box. I saw coming on the pit road, he was extremely cautious, was way down on speed when he got to pit road. When you have a 4-second advantage like he had prior to these pit stops, you can afford that type of precaution coming on the pit road, and you can see a very clean pit stop for the 88 machine, and he is down and away, and now he is trying to get back out onto the racetrack. Have to see how this thing plays out. You can see as he's down on the apron, Michael Guerrilla is in 1 and 2 right now. Is he going to be able to get to that 88 machine when they get around off turn 2 right here? It's going to be very, very close. Can he get by him? This is going to be potentially the race for the lead. He sends it off into turn 3 and will get ahead of him for the moment. They're going to be side by side.
He couldn't clear him though, and on the outside, fresh tires, and back to the gas first. Andrew Farinars, by the thinnest of margins, avoids getting cleared by Michael Guerrilla and passes him as they blend back out onto the racetrack. And it would have been a whale of a 46-lap challenge for the 17 to hold him off if he did clear him, but he was so close. He had an extra 2 feet maybe, and he had him, and instead Farinar sticks up top, keeps the car on the outside. It passes what for right now is P9 and 10, but of course what we are fully expecting to be for the battle for the race win tonight from Dover. And the big thing now is they need the rest of the field to pit. We talked about that, maybe a little bit of timidness for everybody else coming down and pitting, Brian. Well, Andrew Farinar's still a lap down. There's a lot of cars who have not pitted. Falkingham, Cozy, Jacoby, and looks like as well Kyle Kamer, Ross Cato, old drivers who have not yet come down pit road. So for the moment, the 88 machine is a lap down car.
He is, and now you see the one machine of Daniel Falkingham coming to pit road. That's going to move Michael Cozy to the race lead, and Jason Jacoby will be in second. And I'm going to be honest with you, I thought David Washington would have made that decision to stay out on the racetrack a little bit longer, see if he could catch a caution. I think that's what you're going to see Michael Cozy and Jason Jacoby do, especially Jason Jacoby having the gap that he had being 15 seconds behind the race leader prior to this. He wants to stay out here as long as he can, hope to catch a caution. Right now, he'd be in second position, and all of these drivers that are around him would have to come to pit road with him. So he'd be able to just try to get back up front, and he'd have the 88 down a lap, as you mentioned. As right now, he is a lap down. He's not even the first car 1 lap down. Actually, Andrew Farinars is now the first car 1 lap down, but would be an opportunity for the 8 car to get his track position back and potentially be in position to try to win this thing.
Yeah, so he's able to get back to the lucky dog spot. Obviously, the big concern here is after what happened with Preet. You don't want to be a lap down for anything longer than you can help, and well, Spencer Preet night is done after getting trapped at those 2 laps down. He has brought that car behind the wall, so Preet going to fall down to 15th in the running order in a very impossible position. You know, without at least 2-3 yellows, he's not going to be able to get back to the lead lap. He would have finished at least 14th position anyways. So he parks it behind the wall. Preet will be the 4th driver to DNF tonight from Dover, and a pass around Cozy, who stays out. The 77 is still your race leader and is playing out that long game of hoping for a yellow, but you just saw Farinars go by, you just saw Guerrilla go by. Those drivers now back and onto the lead lap, which saves them from getting trapped the lap down if there were to be a caution.
Indeed it does, and I was just going back and looking at the pit stops for Daniel Eberhardt, and I believe he got busted for speeding on exit of pit road during his pit stop because he had to come back in and serve a drive-through penalty, which has put him 3 laps down in the 14th position. So another one of our playoff drivers having issues here in this first race of the playoffs. That's not what he needs going into Talladega, knowing how critical that race could be towards your playoff hopes. This was a race you really need to have a solid night, and for Eberhardt and Preet, they're not having that luck so far.
Cozy has decided to come down to the pit lane, so he will give up the race lead at the time being to the debris of Jason Jacoby, who also has not pitted. Again, had that engine issue, dropped back to the tail end of the lead lap, a 15-second deficit. He is now assumed the race lead. I believe it's only he and Kyle Kamer who have yet to come down to the pit lane. At least they're the only ones who have yet to pit that are in between Andrew Farinars and a 6th consecutive race win. Brian, any chance that these drivers can go to the end?
Absolutely not. The pit window here is about 80 laps, and anything beyond that is pretty much a stretch, and I don't see them being able to make it. And even if they could make it on fuel, they're so much slower on tires right now that I believe Andrew Farinars would run them back down and be able to pass both of them. They're about 3 seconds of a lap slower than Andrew Farinars, and actually about 1.5 seconds or so slower. But with the amount of laps that we have left, Andrew Freenars would be able to just close that gap down and pass both of them with ease. So I think right now, if you're Jason Jacoby, you're just hoping to catch a caution while you've got these guys behind you. You've got Andrew Freenars in the 3rd position behind you. He'd have to come back to pit road because he's put so many laps on his tires at this point. So that's what you're looking for. But by lap 130, the 8 car is going to have to come to pit road. There's no way he can go any further than that.
Well, certainly we'll see if Jacoby could maybe get that stroke of luck. A yellow greatly benefits him and Kyle Kamer now. Of course, Andrew Freenars wanting this to run through. His deficit to your race leader, 17 seconds at the moment. And by being more than a second faster per lap, even if those drivers had some sort of magical ability to be able to go to the end on fuel, it does look like Freenars would be able to get there anyways. The one thing I'm really noticing here is, well, Michael Grilli has fallen to 4th. We know that, but Freenars passed him, sure, but he's right there. I mean, if the 17 could have held him off, I was skeptical that he would have been able to stay in front of him for, I think, what at that moment was about 47 or 46 laps to go, Brian. But even trailing him, Grilli has not fallen any more than 3 or 4 tenths of a second off. This is the best run that the 17's been on all night, and he is keeping the 88 in his sights.
He's keeping him honest at this point of the run. Should this be the race for the win, he's definitely making Andrew Freenars have to sweat it out, which is exactly what you want to do if you're one of his playoff contenders. You don't want to just make this easy on the Freenars. You want to make him have to work for it, and that's what Guerrilla is doing right now, trying to get there and steal something from this 88 machine, which is going to be very difficult to do at this point. But it's just one of those things where you've got to just do whatever you can to try to step up your game, whether it means you just drive harder in the car or you do something different on strategy. I think at this point, we're seeing just how dominant this 88 machine has been. We're seeing these guys really start to rise to the occasion, though, because Guerrilla has really gotten a lot quicker over the last couple of weeks. He's shown some pretty good speed that we didn't see necessarily through the regular season, and this is a good sign for that 17 machine. If they can just carry their speed through the rest of the season, it could be a big chance for him to make it to the Final Four.
That's all you're looking for. Maybe one race to break through. You knock off a couple of consistent, maybe more expected finishes throughout the course of the next 2 weeks. But all you need is one really good finish, and that could be enough to put you above the hump. And listen, it's a mentality I buy into. You know, it's valid in the open round, Vegas, Richmond, Charlotte. I think that that's a valid way to try to get out of the round of 8, maybe a little bit later on. But I still think at the end of all of this, Talladega next week, if you do not win tonight, everybody is at risk headed into the 2.66 miles super speedway that comes up in 1 week's time, the middle race on this round. And that could also be one we talk about all this doom and gloom around Talladega, Brian. For as many drivers who are going to have a bad night there's going to be an equal amount of drivers having a good night. That could be the race that bumps you over the top. That could be a race that you win to lock yourself in from.
It definitely is one of those races where you talk about how it could hurt your chances, but it could absolutely be the biggest night of your season, because it's the equalizer race where anybody has a chance to win. So if you're one of these drivers that maybe doesn't feel like you're going to get in on speed through this round, especially if you're Spencer Preet or Daniel Eberhardt right now, who are going to be facing a pretty big deficit going into Talladega, it could become a must-win situation for a couple of those drivers, which is something that definitely could happen. Of course, Spencer Preet won at Daytona at the beginning of the season, so you have to imagine he's going to be extremely aggressive when we get to Talladega next week, and certainly could be considered one of the odds-on favorites to win.
We look forward to that one, of course. A lot of action still to come on the season. Guerrilla is starting to trickle back a little bit from Freenars, now at about 1.3 seconds. He just waved the 77 to Cozy by, stuck the hand out the window, and sent him on through. So Cozy, better tires from a lap down, is trying to get by, and of course he's not going to hold him off. But as they run down, still Jacoby, still Kamer, 1-2 on track. 25 laps to go from Dover this next time around. And we have to see if the payoff is going to be worth it again. Maybe this goes back to the discussion we had, Brian, about Jason Jacoby being able to take a gamble to go for the race win or not. That if you're staying out this long, if you don't get the yellow, and if you can't somehow make it to the end, you're going to finish way back. You have given up tons of time by staying out here on the old tires. So maybe that makes sense in this grand scheme of things for the true drivers that we're seeing here now. But for Kyle Kamer, I'm not sure. He comes into this, again, everybody is tied, yes, but he was the 8th best driver of the 12 that advanced for the round of 16. I don't know if he can afford this gamble. If this doesn't work out for him and he has to pit, as Farinas goes to the inside, it's a fight for second right now, and it is handily going to go in favor of the 88. If Kamer's got to pit and get fuel, he'll lose tons of time and be way back into points headed into Dega next week.
Oh, he'd go more than a lap down, and granted, he'd be on offense for the final stretch of this race, but it would be very difficult to make up that kind of time without, the amount of laps that we have left here at this point. So I don't know if I like this call if I'm Kyle Kamer. If I'm Jason Jacoby, this is absolutely the right call. You've got to do something different to try to put yourself in a position. If he can get a caution here in the next handful of laps, he'd be able to potentially steal something from Andrew Farinas, but Farinas has gotten that gap down to less than 4 seconds at this point, and will, I believe, easily be able to run him down, even if the 8 machine were somehow able to make it to the end, which I just don't see a 100-lap run being possible out of these drivers. They could prove me wrong. I thought by now you'd see Jacoby making his way to pit road, but he's still out there running laps and hasn't really shown any indication that he's planning on coming in, so maybe he's got a pretty good fuel cell in that car, able to make some good fuel mileage.
We'll see if that is going to be the case, but 20 laps to go. You're running out of time. It's not going to be a race ready to move because Farinas, again, last time by 24.7. You compare that to a 25.6 from Jason Jacoby. It's more than a second a lap. And again, you want to wonder how much time these guys are giving out. Well, the people who pitted, almost about 30 laps to go. Simple math, at least 30 seconds would have been thrown away if this does not pay out. And he eventually has to come down pit road, Brian. But I feel like for Kyle Kamer as well, if this was the call, if you didn't have a hope to go to the end, that by the time you got caught by all these cars, you would have come down pit road now, because you're only going to continue to bleed out, if you will, right now. P4, Dylan Jones about to pass him for 4th and 5th. Once they catch you, that's it. The gig is up if you're going for a race win. And Farinas to the inside on Jacoby. He'll go back to the race lead in this one. The 77 of Cozy's there also. That is not for position, but I have to feel, because these two are still out there, that they are trying to go all the way on fuel.
Yeah, at this point, that looks to be the call. I'd be shocked if they can actually make it all the way. But like I said, maybe they've got something going that I didn't know about. But how about Andrew Farinas? He just stayed true to his strategy, didn't let these guys staying out really affect him at all. He just kept running laps and doing what he needed to do, and now back to the point with less than 20 laps to go, and he is driven away from Michael Guerrilla. We talked about how he was staying close earlier on in this run. Well, now that gap is opened up to over 3.2 seconds right now between the 88 and the 17, so he's no longer able to keep that pace up with the 88 machine, but still having a very solid night. We'd have to believe he's most likely going to get that second place position away from Jason Jacoby before it's all said and done, as he too is running a significant amount quicker than that 8 machine right now. But kudos to Jason Jacoby for making this call, trying to do something different. As you mentioned, the only other time really this season since he's been racing with us was at Las Vegas in his debut, where he had a really strong race car and had some things go against him that kept him from being in position to win. Same thing here again tonight. Had some issues on the racetrack with the engine cutting out. I think this might have been the one driver that could have challenged Farinas had they been on the same strategy.
And they started off in that position. They were side by side on the front row for a restart off of what has been the only caution flag so far this evening. And then, of course, that dreaded engine issue took the 8 machine basically way out of contention. It would have been fun to see those guys go head-to-head, and instead we are 15 laps away from an Andrew Farinas ticket into the round of 8, which would be huge for him, because if there's any round of the playoffs that can give somebody issues, it would have been this one. Listen, later this year, Martinsville, Texas, Phoenix. There's a couple of racetracks in there that are tons of fun. 2 short tracks, stuff happens. But, the unpredictability of Talladega certainly is the one I would highlight if I'm a very good car. Farinas, Bowie, Comstock. It's the round. And if I even argue, Brian, 24th race in, that this is the most important race these drivers have run all season long, just based on the circumstances. And for Farinas to be able to execute again would be quite impressive. Good opportunity as we continue to wait and see, as we watch the fuel numbers to see if any of those drivers do dive to the pit lane. And there it is. Jason Jacoby is down to pit road. Kyle Kamer in the 10 has not, but Jacoby has finally given up, and he pits at lap 137.
Yeah, I mean, he was committed to this strategy at this point anyway. There was no reason not to run this thing all the way to the end of the fuels tank, just because he's going to fall a lap down, possibly fall 2 laps down before it's all said and done, just because of how long he's going to be on pit road. Running at 35 miles an hour while everybody else is at speed, it costs you a tremendous amount of time around this little track, and you already see he's already been lapped once by Andrew Freenarge, and it looks like Andrew's on his way around again to get him for a second time. So definitely going to be a big hit for this number 8 machine, but like I said, it was a good call, just trying to do something different to give yourself a chance to try to steal a win. Unfortunately, it did not play out in his favor, but worked out really nicely for that 88 machine. And like you said earlier on, a very big race here for these guys, as this is we actually have a battle for 4th position going on between Brandon Bowie and David Washington. These guys racing pretty hard. How about Bowie making his way up through the field? He started back in 14th, and now he's battling for 3rd.
He is battling for that 4th position with Bowie right now, but a defense. It's Washington attacking down low. He comes side by side off the corner. Either driver willing to give it inch. Again, we talk about the difference a single point may make, and it's only these 2 cars. I don't really think either of them have an opportunity to catch anybody else. David Comstock's only a second behind them. So I guess if this goes on for some time, there's a risk there. But a big difference with this battle happening now at lap 141 compared to 41 O'Brien is that 43 of Bowie holds him off on the outside. Earlier in this race, I think that 98 gets down low, no problem, but because the rubber's been put down and this group has widened out, as you now see the 98 try to force his way to the outside, but it makes this a lot more of a fair fight, and they thought that the 98 machine was going to be out of luck there, but the 43 sideways were on board with him outside line. Here comes Washington.
And it's really exciting to see that outside line working, because it just creates this type of racing that we're seeing right now. These guys can get side by side, they can battle like this, but like you said just a couple of minutes ago, that's bringing David Comstock into this picture, which is big if you're Brandon Bowie, because while yes, that's your teammate, that's also a playoff contender, and that's potentially a point you're going to lose to him if Comstock can get there and get by. And that position over David Washington, while David is not a playoff contender, that's a point in your favor to try to get ahead of some of these guys that you are racing. So that was a critical race right there between him and the 98 machine, and Bowie is probably kicking himself that he wasn't able to hold on, because now he's got that 42 machine right on his bumper trying to take that position away as well.
It has allowed Comstock to close in, and you have to question, if you're that 43 Brandon Bowie, would this have been different if you just let him go when he first got to you about 5-6 laps ago, tucked in behind? You certainly would have been, I think, a couple more car lengths in front would have been enough to run out these final 5 laps left to go in this race from Dover. But alas, the 42 machine in a spot. I think David Comstock going to be able to get this. There's another bomb on the 2, and I think Brandon Bowie is just going to give it up. He goes down low, lets the 42 on to by, and David Comstock now top 5 car in the closing laps from Dover.
Yeah, this is the best that Comstock has ran since the beginning of the race. He was able to get up inside the top 5 briefly on the first run, but other than that has really kind of struggled here tonight. But rebounding at the end of this thing to get up inside the top 5. Does he have time to run down that 98 machine to try to go after 4th? That's going to be a big question as we get to 4 laps to go right here. That's going to be his last opportunity for a position on the racetrack. He might have a little bit of help from this lap car if he can make something happen here, but it looks like the lap car is going to get out of the way for the 98 machine right there. That was Kyle Kamer, who also had to come to pit road not too long ago. He's currently being shown 2 laps down, as we talked about. Jason Jacoby also was 2 laps down. He's managed to get one of those laps back on those fresher tires, but it's going to be too little too late for that 8 machine.
Do you think that P13 for Kyle Kamer is really going to sting by the time we get an updated look at the playoff grid headed into the race next week? This time, Bondo popsicle sticks to the air. Andrew Ferdinar is going to take 2 laps to go at Dover. He's past the point of no return, and well, you talk about the success he's found at all different kinds of racetracks. We haven't been to a place like Dover, Brian, in the last 6 weeks. He notches another one under the belt if he can close this one out.
Yeah, absolutely incredible by this 88 machine. Just how dominant he is on all different styles of racetracks, a road course, a short track, intermediate track, speedways. It's just amazing how good he has been. Well on his way as they come to the white flag to get his 6th win in a row and 9th on the season.
Obviously 9th on the season, going to put him well above Dylan Jones, who has been very quiet in the recent weeks, and Andrew Freitas has made it clear that he is the driver to beat in a Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series powered by English Auto LLC. Last time into the quarter, it'll be his 6th in a row, and he's got a free pass through Talladega next week. Andrew Farinars wins from Dover, and no surprise is headed into the round of 8.
Yeah, I think that was a very safe assumption to say that he was easily going to make it into the round of 8. This was the race where if any of these drivers could have kept him from winning, they needed to do it. That way he had to sweat it out at Talladega next week and potentially put himself into a must-win situation at Kansas in 2 weeks. But nobody was able to do that. Just another dominant performance by this 88 machine. But how about the playoff drivers? You've got all but one driver in the top 10. Being playoff contenders, so they have all risen to the occasion, knowing just how important this round is. David Washington was the only one in the top 10 to break them up. He finishes in the 4th spot.
Finishes in that number 4 position, and the celebrating on the front straightaway has begun. Farinars is pretty good at doing these things as he celebrates another one, and he'll do the burnout along the fence here and allow some of the other drivers to come on through. Just impressive, incredible stuff that we're seeing out of the 88 machine, and even if it does end at Talladega, the odds say it will. You cannot understate just how good he has been, and I have to think, Brian, if you keep getting beat by the same guy, you're going to get pissed off after a while. Who is going to be the driver to break the streak, if anybody?
Well, I do believe next week is a big opportunity for these drivers to finally break that streak, being Talladega. I don't think you can really call Andrew Farinars a favorite going there, but certainly he has nothing to lose now. He can go out there and be as aggressive as he likes to try to go out there and get another win and keep this streak alive. But if I had to pick any of these drivers to go out there and take it away from him, I'm going to say Spencer Preet. I feel like he's now in a must-win situation after his issues here tonight. He won at Daytona. He was quick at Talladega earlier this year. I think that's the man that's going to go out there next week at Talladega and give him the best chance to steal that victory away from the 88 machine.
See if that is the case. There was an incident on the last lap of this race. Daniel Eberhardt in the number 90 machine did not make it to the end. He was involved in an accident coming to the checkered flag with him and Jason Jacoby. So both of those cars technically go for a DNF. Because I think Jacoby was able to make it around, but I believe Eberhardt did crash on the last lap of the race for him and did not make it to the end. I don't believe it cost him anything, but tough break when you have a rough night. Certainly, we'll see the impact on that. We'll try to stick around just an extra moment here to get a replay of this with Brian. I just noticed it as the 90 machine was able to limp it home, so they both did finish. But there was an accident when those cars came to the white flag. Eberhardt bounced off the outside wall and into the 8 car, both of them crashing in turn 1. It didn't trigger the yellow, though, because Farinars was already on the white flag lap.
Yeah, and that's just one of those deals where you have Jacoby, who's on much fresher tires, just trying to get around here, and Daniel Eberhardt, who's at this point was just trying to limp home to the checkered flag, and it's just unfortunate that this happened, but I don't believe it really affected the outcome of this thing. Eberhardt was still going to finish where he was running, and Jacoby was honestly probably going to finish where he was running. So unfortunate for these guys, but definitely still doesn't really change much for these guys. It's going to be very difficult for Daniel Eberhardt, Spencer Preet, and even Kyle Kamer, who had some issues there. Now, these guys are going to have their work cut out for them if they're going to climb their way back into this thing.
We'll step aside to get a post-race reaction in a moment. You're watching LSR TV's coverage of the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series powered by English Auto LLC. The post-race show is next from Dover on the iRacing Esports Network.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of LSR TV, and it may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of RealSimRacing LLC and iRacing.com Motorsport Simulations. LSR TV would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. And back live from the Dover International Speedway for the LSR TV post-race show following tonight's Dover 150. Happy that you're with us. You're home for Sim Racing and the iRacing Esports Network. Evan Pasoko, Brian Macklin upstairs with you, with our producer Brett Wheeler bringing us to you this evening. We'll go trackside to get a post-race reaction from your top finishers in just a moment. Before we do so, we'll look top to bottom. These are your LSR TV full race results tonight for round number 24. Frenars gets the win 6 in a row. We'll get his reaction to DeMore, Michael Grillia, second, Dylan Jones, third, all of them standing by with us on the pit lane. David Washington does win out in that late race fight with David Comstock for fourth, so Comstock has to accept a P5 finish at the end of this one. Brandon Bowie snatches a P6 result. It'll be seventh for Lionel Callisto, Daniel Falkenham at eighth, Michael Cozy Jr. A good night trickles down to a P9, and Dwayne Vincent, first driver outside of the top 9, and first driver not on the lead lap, rounds out your top 10.
And Jason Jacoby having some issues throughout the evening. He comes home with an 11th place finish, also one lap down. Ross Cato will finish P12. Kyle Kamer, after trying to use the same strategy we saw Jacoby use at the end of this thing, he finishes up P13. Going to have to wonder if that decision is going to come back to haunt the 10 car later on in this thing. Daniel Eberhardt having issues throughout the night, had that speeding penalty down on pit road. He ends up 14th, and the last car actually still on the racetrack. Spencer Preet was the first car behind the wall. He finishes in 15th. And then we have Eric Stanford, Tom Morano, and Brock Drury rounding out your 18-car field. What a race we had here tonight, Evan Pasoko. And now you're down in victory lane with the man that did officially tame the Monster Mile here tonight, Mr. Andrew Freenars down in victory lane.
And this race came down to a lot of speed and a lot of green flag running. And when you have those combinations with a fast race car, there's not a whole lot you can do. Andrew Freenars, your race winner tonight from the Dover International Speedway with the driver of the 88 Ford now. Andrew, fancy meeting you down here. Congratulations on the win. It looked like this may have been the night that bit you there. You guys didn't quite get, I would expect, what you wanted out of that qualifying session. But P6 didn't hurt you that much. You got up front quickly, and at that point, it was just about being consistent. Got one yellow there, and other than that, it was smooth sailing, green all the way.
Woo! How about that one, man? Feels good to do that after last time here. We had just as dominant car, and we couldn't close the deal. We got in a late race wreck there with 10 to go with a 6-second lead, but I came back hungry, man. I wanted to win this one bad. This is one of my 3 home tracks, and Jesus, I was nervous as nervous gets coming to those final laps. But yeah, I mean, we had a good car there. I think Jacoby really had a decent car in the long run. That first run, I really wasn't sure how to drive it, and I got really tight, and he started catching me, and he got to my back bumper. Dylan actually pointed out you should run really slow at the start, kind of half throttle, and I did that the next run, and I think that fixed all the issues we were having. But God, man, that feeling feels great.
Obviously, you know, drivers up there, Michael, you mentioned Jacoby, who had that engine issue, and that kind of took him out of this thing. Spencer had a good car. He got trapped 2 laps down, in fact, when that one and only caution flag came out. It seems like that there's some drivers who have some bad luck, and, you know, good race cars can only do so much when the stars don't align. But not only do you guys bring that fast race car to the track, but you're smart about what you do with it. We saw, you know, when you initially closed in to make a battle for the race lead, didn't force the issue out of the gate, waited a little bit, and then decided to make your move down to the inside and pass it. Conserving the equipment, certainly a key factor tonight at Dover. It wasn't really a crazy race, though. That's, you know, what we sometimes expect to see out of the Monster Mile. How did this kind of compare to what you were prepared for?
Kind of squeezed everything again this week like I did last week. Kind of ran some practice Sunday night and a lot today. So, you know, really, I knew that the right front was going to wear off the car. I actually did a full fuel run and had 11% on my right front. So I knew I had to change something with that. So I kind of started backing it up, trying to run it easier. And I think that's one of the reasons we were able to catch Preet. He seems like he was driving in a little harder. But, I mean, the track conditions I practiced in were a little hotter than this. So I was kind of expecting, it to be a little more looser, but I think it was 8 degrees cooler. So, we were ready. It was kind of about 2/10 quicker. So, for the most part, it was the same that we practiced in, and we were ready for it.
Of course, this is a big win. Me and Brian discussed it over the course of this one that I thought it was the most important race of the year just because speed can only get you so far when Talladega Superspeedway is in the round. And, a second place finish here would have got you a ton of points. It gets Michael Guerrilli a ton of points. It gets Dylan Jones a ton of points. None of that protects against what could happen this week at Dega. And you kind of build it up. There's always a chance it goes wrong. There's a chance it goes right, though. You never really know. How big is this one in particular, aside from the fact that it's the 6th in a row and you guys are as hot as could be, but the fact that you do not have to worry about, I think, the biggest question mark on the whole playoff schedule?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge going into next week, Talladega. I actually predict that to be a semi calm race. Like I said, I like race with these guys all year, and we're pretty calm. I think if we get green flag stopped, you'll see that field get spread out and a lot of strategy with teammates and whatnot. But, I mean, this one is huge. This is Dover. This is my favorite track on the sim. This is my favorite track to go to in real life. I love this place. And like I said, it's a home track, so just that being alone is huge. That we don't have to go into Talladega and not worry is just an add-on. But, I mean, I can't believe we won it. We'll go collect that Monster Mile trophy.
Well, I know that you mentioned it last week when we chatted. You put with you post-race at Charlotte that you love this racetrack. You wanted to get the win, and you did just that tonight in the Dover 150. Before we let you go, as always, sponsor shout-outs to folks behind the scenes who makes the 88 Ford go so fast.
Big shout-out to my dad and my brother for building computers, my grandpa, all the family that has to put up with me running these things. They actually had to turn the TV off so I could do one of these interviews. So big thanks to him. Everybody on this team, Dylan Jones, David Washington, Daniel Everhart, Kyle Kammer, Ross Cato, Eric Stanford, Andy put the paint on today. It looked beautiful out there. You guys for broadcast stuff, you, Evan, for all you do, and all these guys that I get to race against every single week. I know Cozy there came in a practice session I had, and Preet came in. It's a shame what happened to him because that was going to be I think a fun race between them two. Glad to see them out there practicing. Glad I could help them out a little. I hope I did at least. And really, all the fans for watching, all the support. And that's about it.
Race winner tonight from Dover and a lot of other racetracks as well. Andrew, we always appreciate the time. Congratulations. We'll catch you next week at Talladega.
Thanks so much. Look forward to restrictor plate racing.
Race winner tonight from the Monster Mile. He wanted it. He got it. 9 wins on 2018. And the flip side of that might not get as much attention, but it was a great night for Michael Guerrilli, the driver of the 17 machine. It comes home in second. He is standing by with Brian Backlund.
Indeed he is. I'm down here on pit road with our second place winner, Michael Guerrilli. Michael, a very solid night for you here tonight. Good points night going into Talladega next week, but obviously not what you were looking for, trying to get up there and tame that Monster Mile and steal this thing away from Andrew Freenarch. Take us through your night.
Yeah, it may not seem like it gone the way I wanted to, but comparing it to the last 5 weeks where I've wrecked it practically every single time, I'll take a second place. I had a horrible round 1, wrecked in the first 2 races and couldn't show up to the third one. I'm glad I made it in through that, but glad to start off the second round pretty good. But yeah, every time I feel like I have a good car compared to the rest of the field, Freenarch is always like 3 seconds up the road, and I'm just kind of stuck. So I just got to deal with that and just got to try and find something to get up to him.
There was a point at the end of this race when you guys were coming through your round of green flag pit stops. You had an opportunity to get ahead of the 88 machine. Had you been able to beat him coming out of the pits, do you think you could have held him off to the finish, or do you think he would have eventually gotten around you?
In hindsight, I really just thought about dooring him just because he was just that much quicker than me. Because we went side by side in the 3, and I'm like, now's my chance. And I had the inside corner. I knew he was going to pinch me off, and I thought I was just going to slide up a little bit, get him a little loose, hit a dorm or something like that. But, if he got back to my outside again, there's no way I was going to defend from him. So when I saw him leave me in turn 4, I knew it was over at that point. So, but if I was in front of him, I'd definitely make it hard. I'd pinch the crap out of him on that apron, try to make him as loose as possible. But I just knew he had a lot fresher tires, and I had a lot to deal with there.
Now, we heard from Andrew talking about Talladega next week, and he said he expects a relatively calm race because of the fact that, for the most part, everybody in here, they race with each other every single week. They know how each other races, and he doesn't really expect a lot of action, so to speak, next week at Talladega. What do you expect out of the Super Speedway, and what do you have to do to put yourself in a position to not get caught up in the big one and score enough points to feel comfortable going into Kansas?
Well, basically, I think it's going to be a little bit kind of hectic because I'm pretty sure a few more people are going to turn up for the next race. So I'm looking at probably like a 25 car field, and there's a few randoms in there. I don't know what they're going to do. And there's always a wild card every now and then. Someone's trying to be aggressive. But I feel like it's going to be a little hectic. Just the big thing is to make sure you have somebody to work with. I'm trying to get a group to work with to fight off these aegis guys. See if we can keep Freenars out of a win to cut that streak at 6. But just getting a working partner, staying up front, staying out of the wreck.
Well, sounds like a very good strategy. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But before we let you go, Michael, sponsor shout-outs. Who makes it happen for you on the 17 machine?
I just want to thank Desmond for being a part of their team. Justin Radner for the paint scheme. After converting it from the SS to the SEL1, it's a beautiful paint scheme. Other than that, yeah.
All right, well, congratulations on your second place finish here tonight, and good luck next week at Talladega. Hopefully we can catch up with you again there.
Yep, thanks. See you then.
A solid night here tonight, but he's looking to break that streak that Andrew Freenarch has going on. Now, I'm going to slide over here very quickly and catch up with our third place finisher, Dylan Jones. You got a third place finish here tonight after starting in 12th. Obviously a pretty solid night here for you as well. This is a track that I felt like you had a pretty good chance at maybe getting up there and dethroning Andrew Freenarch, but you just never quite could get the track position. Take us through your night.
Yeah, we didn't have very good effort to start out the race there and started behind, and really just never had track position. And with, I guess on the bright side, long green runs, but in the end that kind of hurt us. And through the middle portion there, I thought we could have made up some ground. We really saved some tires, but there was a certain driver in my way that kind of raced us. And I mean, it is a race, but we were way faster than him, and it was just killing us both. And Andrew got out to a big lead, and he never gave it up or made a mistake.
So Andrew has officially surpassed he surpassed it last week, getting 5 wins in a row. Now he's up to 6 wins in a row. You have an opportunity to match that through the rest of the season if you can win the next 6 straight. Is there any chance that you could pull that off and win 6 straight and go for the championship?
Why not? We're going to give it a try, but Andrew's pretty tough right now. He's got all the momentum like I had it earlier. Maybe I might have peaked a little bit early, and now the momentum's on his side, so we got to try and grab that away from him.
Well, when you look to the next 6 races, obviously Talladega is a wild card race, but if you look beyond that, you've got Kansas, Martinsville, Texas, Phoenix, and then, of course, Homestead. If you had to circle any one of those tracks that you felt like you could get up there and really kind of build that momentum back up in your favor, what track would it be?
Probably going to be Phoenix. I like short tracks, so that'll be a good track, and right before Homestead, it'd be a great time to build this up again.
We'll have to wait and see what happens, but certainly a good night tonight gives you a pretty good spot moving ahead into the round of 8. Of course, you have to worry about Talladega, but before we let you go, Dylan, sponsor shout-outs. Who makes it happen for you on the 11 car?
Just thanks to all the guys at LSR TV for putting this on, and everyone for Aegis for all the time we worked together.
Well, congrats on your 3rd place finish, and we'll see you next week at Talladega.
Thank you.
That was Dylan Jones. He finishes 3rd here tonight. He's currently being shown 3rd in the points after Dover here tonight. Evan Pasoko, a pretty solid night for him. But the bottom 4, I have to be honest with you, I'm a little surprised at who's down there. With Daniel Eberhardt being in 12th, then you got Spencer Preet, Kyle Kamer, and Dwayne Vincent right above him. Michael Koji Jr. being in that cutoff spot. Talladega is certainly going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it is going to be an interesting one, Brian. You mentioned the points. Let's take a look at them. As you mentioned, the way that it appears now, Dwayne Vincent would be the first driver on the outside. Looking in, that is just a 1-point difference, though. Kamer is 4 out, Preet 5 out, Eberhardt 6 out. None of those drivers in a position where they must win. I think this could be a very... If Ferdinand expects to see out of that race at Talladega, where drivers who are very familiar with each other could work with one another, and it's a lot more of a strategy-based plate race, is true. This could come down to a race at Kansas that is wide open based on how tight it is.
Absolutely. I think Talladega, I'm on the side of Michael Guerrilla. I think Talladega is going to be a little bit more hectic than maybe what Andrew Friedars is expecting. I believe you're going to see a lot of these drivers who are frustrated. They've seen Andrew Friedars win the last 6 straight. They've seen Andrew Friedars and Dylan Jones win every race since June. They want to mix this up. They want to put their name in the win column for a change, and they know Talladega is one of those tracks where the draft equalizes everybody. You have just as good a chance of winning as Andrew Friedars or Dylan Jones or anybody else. So I think you're going to see this thing get a little crazy, which could be an issue for some of these playoff drivers. If you have that big one, you get caught up in it, you can cost yourself a ton of points. No, if you're Kyle Kamer, if you're Spencer Preet, Daniel Eberhardt, you're not in a must-win situation, but you're in a must-finish-well situation at Talladega if you even want to consider making it to the round of 8 through when you get to Kansas.
And we hope that you join us next Monday night for that one. Until then, that's it for us here tonight from the Monster Mile. We hope that you stick with us right here, though, LSR TV, and now on the iRacing Sports Network, also Wednesday nights with the eSpeed Contender Series as their playoffs continue. It is a 9 o'clock Eastern start on this October the 17th. We are also on this Thursday back here at LSR TV at 9 o'clock for the Cesra Series. Full broadcast schedule on our website. You can go to www.livesimracing.com. And as well, keep up to date with us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/LSRTV official. And you can follow us on Twitter at LSRTV for more. Until next time, on behalf of our entire team at RealSimRacing LLC, the folks behind the scenes, and of course, the people who make it happen night in and night out, for your broadcast team tonight, for myself, Evan Pasoko, for Brian Backlund, and our producer, Brett Wheeler, we want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Andrew for our 6 in a row. Can he get another one? We return to the plate tracks, Talladega Superspeedway, next Monday night. That race and every race for the rest of this Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series can be found right here on your home for sim racing and the iRacing Esports Network. Until next time, good night from Dover. The following is a special presentation of iRacing on LSR TV, your home for sim racing.